Thank you so much, Simon. That was so interesting. I just think of ZZ Top. If anyone remembers, they said the future is so bright you got to wear shades. I think we're finally there. Now we're going to welcome another iconic brand to the stage, one which has been in stores since 1856. No Instagram at that time. While longevity isn't always a guarantee of success, being able to reinvent your identity, however, is crucial. That's something our next speaker knows all about. Please welcome, in conversation with RGA's Barry Wacksman, Burberry's VP of Digital Marketing, Rachel Waller.
You get the comfy sofa.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending. I think we're down to the last 2 hours of Web Summit. So you guys are the last survivors of this amazing week. Hopefully, it's been a good event for you. And we're excited to talk to you today about fashion and the business of fashion, and particularly the impact of technology on fashion. And I'm very privileged to have Rachel with me from Burberry. And I think we all have to give props to Burberry because they really have been a pioneer in digital media for quite a long time, when a lot of luxury brands, a lot of fashion brands were very fearful about the digital revolution. I think a lot of fashion brands think of their category as one where the creative leaders of those brands have a very unique point of view on their category, on style. And I think that they've been somewhat fearful, perhaps, about a technology that allows consumers into the conversation. Burberry never shied away from that conversation, pioneering campaigns going all the way back to 2008, the Art of the Trench. This is even before Facebook and social media were really at their, really taking off the way that they were. And we see Burberry creating a platform that enabled consumers to share their own view of fashion and style with the world. So as a pioneer in the category, what do you think Burberry's learned over almost the last decade now of social media?
I think, I can't take too much credit for the last decade of Burberry. I've only been there personally for 4 months, but I most recently came from Farfetch, which is also, another really great innovator in this space. And even when I was at Farfetch, we always had this sense that Burberry really had this spirit of innovation, and they were super digital. We really held them in that esteem. I think really what Burberry has learned in the last decade or so is that it's very much about the people. I think I've inherited this amazing team at Burberry, and you can just tell culturally this whole sense of digital and innovation is so embedded in who they are. It's in the way they talk, in the way they behave, their appetite. It's very much a cultural thing at Burberry. And I think the other thing is by doing this very early on, to your point, what Burberry has managed to do is we've built really great relationships with the big tech players, over the last decade, in a way that has never been more important. So even in September, when we did our new show, we did a big collaboration with Apple where we used their new phone before it was even available to purchase. And it's all those relationships that have really helped kind of keep us, help drive us along.
Right. Now, obviously, social platforms have evolved a lot since the Art of the Trench back 2008. We've obviously seen the rise of platforms that are really hospitable to fashion, like Instagram. Can you give just a few comments on just the role of how you see some of these major platforms and some of the things that you've done with them, perhaps over the last year?
For sure. I think social is so important to us at Burberry. We are huge believers in Instagram. We love the idea of connecting the inspiration and the commerce. And we're also huge advocates of WeChat. I think, it's one of those things, if you ever want a crystal ball to the future, you just need to tinker around in WeChat for a bit.
Right.
So we're really seeing those places as the future of our communities and that kind of inspiration to commerce connection.
Excellent. Now, I know you guys did a major rebranding this year. And I think, by and large, when a lot of organizations think about rebranding, for them, it's just a change in the logo, and obviously you change on the facade of the store and on the side of the bag. But yours was much more ambitious, and you leveraged a lot of different channels, both experiential as well as social media, to launch a new brand. You want to comment a little bit about that? And we're going to show a video in a few minutes to back that up.
Yeah, so for us, our CEO, Marco Bizzari, launched a new strategy for us last year, which was all about repositioning Burberry, which is kind of fascinating for a heritage brand like ours. And it was really rooted in this idea of looking at how, looking at our product, obviously, but also looking at our communication and our customer experiences. So when we thought about the rebrand, we thought about it, we were like, how can this in itself be different? And we kind of did it with two main things. So as you mentioned, we had this huge advertising and marketing campaign. We had giant bears in Shanghai and New York and London. We had huge building wraps. We'll show you some examples of all of that. But I think what was unique about this in terms of a rebrand for us is that we basically rooted all of this in social media. And we did this for kind of two main reasons. One, we wanted to take, at the end of the day, if you follow us on Instagram or WeChat or wherever, you're invested in our brand, and we wanted those people to be the first to know about this change. This is the community, these are the people who are leaning into us. And so we really wanted to kind of take them on a journey with us. So when we launched our logo and our monogram, we did it on our social platforms. We released these transcripts of a conversation between our Chief Creative Officer, Ricardo, and the legendary Peter Saville, so you could actually read what they'd said to each other. And it was really about being really open with that community and inviting them into this new world with us. And then the second thing was we had all this huge out-of-home, which reached massive audiences. But we were like, how can we make it even bigger and take it from being really important and local, but really put it on this global stage? And again, we just brought everyone into our world through social. We live streamed the inflation of the bears. We took you to the Hamptons to see where we'd wrapped a hotel. And it was really about taking people on this journey with us. And in many ways, actually, by doing this, we made it, somehow by bringing it all together, it became sort of bigger than the sum of its parts, which we were very excited about.
It's absolutely beautiful rebranding for such a heritage brand that has such a legacy with its identity, just how modern it looks. Can we show the first video? Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
Very understated.
So another topic that I think's been on everyone's lips, in fact, there was an article today in the Business of Fashion about product drops. And obviously, this is a trend that started with the streetwear brands. I live in New York City. For 6 years, I lived around the corner from the flagship store of a brand called Supreme. And every week, as I was on my way to the office at 8 a.m., I would see these kids lined up to go into the store. And it just blew my mind what an incredible business model had emerged from these streetwear companies. My company works with a number of brands that are not so much in the luxury fashion business, but in the apparel space like Nike, and we'll talk about Nike in a few minutes. But now we've begun to see this new trend of luxury fashion moving into the space of doing product drops, and in particular, doing them through technology, through social media. So you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you did this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're huge lovers of drop culture. To your point, we've spent a lot of time looking at what the streetwear brands were doing. We also spent a lot of time, like I mentioned, in Instagram and WeChat. And we very much value this connection between these moments when you're inspired and, and when you want to purchase. And so we kind of were thinking about all of these different elements. We had our new show and our new rebranding in September, and we kind of landed on this idea of doing social commerce drops. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, what we basically did is that we launched something called the B Series, where on the 17th of every month, Burberry releases a drop for 24 hours on socials. So we started it on Instagram and WeChat, and we're now also doing Line and Kakao. And these drops vary in size, they vary in product, and they're really just a way for us to build dialogue with our consumer, and especially our younger consumer. They're not intended in any way to be a kind of a key financial mechanic for the brand. They are very much just a way for us to communicate with our consumer. And so we've been doing these. We did one before our show in September. We did kind of a surprise with Ricardo. We did one after the show, and we had people staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning in China waiting to buy the drop, which blows my mind. And then we did another one in October. And I think the reality of it just blows my mind.
Right.
The sell-through is unbelievable. We've seen people like Rihanna, as you saw in the video, wearing the product, and The Weeknd. We see some of the highest engagement of any content we've put out there from these drops. And every time we've done them, so we've now done 3, we see actually that the velocity of sell-through is higher.
Right.
So we feel like they're obviously really speaking to a consumer. They're a way for us to get people into our new brand before our full collection drops in February. And it's a kind of a new way that we want to look to communicate with our customer. I think the important thing for us is just about how we build that community of people on that journey with us, because I think that's where the real kind of community and the dialogue is really important to make it feel authentic for us. But it's something that's kind of blown our minds, and we're super excited to see how we can evolve it and change it over the coming months.
Excellent. So at my company, our oldest client is Nike, and we've worked together continuously for 17 years. And we were fortunate to work with Nike on things like the creation of Nike ID that allows people to custom design products. We led the design and development of Nike Plus back in around 2006. The Nike Fuel Band, 2012 is when it launched. And then recently, we've been working with Nike on just reimagining every aspect of customer experience. In fact, we created a whole new language inside of RGA that I think we're trying to use to push the envelope even just for ourselves. So rather than just talking about things like designing new experiences or whatever, we call this experience transformation. And I think that raises the bar that every time you do something, you're trying to do something that's been net new, that's never been done before. Now, Nike's been doing product drops for quite some time. But we got a brief recently from Jordan Brand, which is, of course, a basketball-focused brand created by Michael Jordan and Nike many, many decades ago. And they were about to launch a new Jordan shoe. This was also reimagining sports sponsorship. So Nike sponsors a lot of events around the world, but what if we just take the idea of a sponsorship and raise it to a new level? So this sponsorship involved the NBA All-Star Game, which happens every February in Los Angeles this past year. And so we had a sports sponsorship. We were trying to introduce a new product. We're actually celebrating the 30th anniversary of an iconic moment in the brand's history, which was Michael Jordan winning the slam dunk competition at the NBA All-Star Game in 1998 by leaping from the free throw line and making the slam dunk. 1988, pardon me. And so all of this came together, and I think obviously this is a technology-focused conference. Like, how do you layer technology to create a completely new experience? We brought in some aspects of AR, using Snapchat as a partner, and we wanted to blow people's minds. So it was a product drop. We only made it available to people who were at the event. They were the only ones that can purchase it. So we used a technology that geo-fenced the sale of the product. And then through a partner company that was part of RGA Ventures, we were able to deliver the product within 2 hours to all the people who were at the game and bought it. And so they get home that night from the event, and the product's waiting for them, which I think is this idea of really transferring the experience to blow people's minds. So if we can show the second video, please. This is AR Jordan.
Is backing all the way to the middle of the backcourt.
Creativity and imagination is the key. Plus, he's got to make the dunk.
To celebrate 30 years since Michael Jordan's iconic free throw line dunk, we created an experience just as iconic. By recreating Michael in 3D, we brought him back to the court. This time in augmented reality for fans around the world. Users could experience all 6'6" of Michael flying through the air, true to his pose on the court in 1988. But this was no ordinary Snapchat AR lens.
The sneaker was released on Snapchat, allowing customers to purchase the shoe on the app.
That same Snapchat lens allowed users to purchase the Air Jordan 3 Tinkers. We partnered with Shopify to power the geofence commerce experience directly in Snapchat. Interacting with MJ, users are prompted to start their purchase. Fans would have the ability to quickly pick their size, add the exclusive sneakers to their bag, and complete their order within seconds. We then leveraged Darkstore for their express last-mile delivery service to get the sneakers direct to fans in under 2 hours. Successfully creating a social commerce experience in augmented reality. The sneaker sold out in 23 minutes. The lens generated 4 times the user engagement in Snapchat, and the world looked at e-commerce in a whole new way.
That's amazing.
Thank you. So we've talked about social, we've talked about technology. I think we'll wrap up by just, I'll ask Rachel, how you guys see the future. How do you continually push the envelope, customer experience? How do you bring new technologies in? And maybe some comments on, maybe some predictions from your point of view on what you think is in the emerging space that might become important to Burberry in the future.
Big question to end on.
All right, the last one.
I think I guess from a macro level that maybe answers your question in multiple ways. One of the things that I am super interested in, and I've kind of touched on a little bit, and I think a few other people have touched on, and in many ways, actually, your example touches on really neatly, is really around community, which I feel like is something, actually, if you look at the sports brands, the sports brands have done an amazing job at this. Sports brands are now almost platform agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're on Snapchat or Instagram, they're just, the communities built around these things are really powerful. And I think luxury is all about experience. And as we digitize luxury, there's something really interesting in that kind of pairing between what we do with our communities and the experiences we build for them. And really, digital is best placed to make that a reality. I think it's all about how we unpack the one-on-one conversations that you have with our brand at scale. And when I say that, I don't just mean personalization. I mean it as what are the meaningful ways that you can interact with us. And then also, how do we connect you into the rest of our world? You know, if we have a bunch of people who love trenches, and we do, how do we connect you into those people who are like-minded and want to have a similar experience? So actually, those one-on-one conversations don't just have to be brand to individual. They can be individual to individual. And I think it's unpacking all of that around how we as luxury brands communicate truly with communities, I think is the big opportunity for us. And that will be entirely enabled by platforms and technology.
Amazing. Unfortunately, our 20 minutes of fame is over. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for sharing all the amazing things that Burberry's up to. And thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of Web Summit.